What's up, everybody, and welcome to the continuation conversation of Swank Arts and Entertainment's live broadcast of The Space in Between. Tonight is a very special night for me because I am so excited to sit down with some members of our trans community. So grab a snack, grab a drink, and join us. You don't want to miss this conversation.
Just hit me up on the phone, telephone. You're never alone. I know how to make you feel like home. I just wanna make it feel. Just wanna make you feel like home. Feel like home. I just wanna make you feel like home. I have some amazing friends, and we're gonna have an amazing weekend. Just hit me up on the phone. Anytime I take it alone. I don't feel deep if I know how to make it feel like home. I just wanna make it feel. Just wanna make it feel like home. I know how to make it feel like home.
All right, this is the Space in Between conversation, and tonight again we have the trans community representing themselves. First and foremost, again, I'm your boy Dwayne Q, and I'm really, really excited. If you can't tell, I'm excited about this conversation. So let's bring in our panelists for tonight. First up, we have, ladies first, is the coach of all coaches, Blossom C. Brown. She's an activist, an actress, a producer, inspirational speaker, and spiritual life coach. You might have seen Blossom last year doing the LGBT town hall on CNN, where she grabbed the mic and she expressed how important it was for Black trans men and women to have a voice in our community. And without further ado, here is Blossom C. Brown. Hello, Coach Brown.
Hello, Dwayne Q. How are you? I love how I did that.
I'm good, thank you. I'm so glad to have you here. I'm so glad to have you. So thank you for taking the time out to speak with us and sit with us. Next up, we have Dr. Elijah Nicholas, author, community advisor, inspirational speaker, and spiritual advisor rather. Now, Doc has so many accolades to his name. He's got a doctorate in business administration, a master's in business administration. He's got a master's in adult education and training, a master's in military operations, arts, and leadership, and a bachelor's of science in administration and justice. And he is the new author of a children and family book called Medoodle. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Elijah Nichols. How are you, brother? Let's get him in. Hey, wait. Wait. Okay.
I'm doing wonderful.
Okay, there we go. Woo! I was gonna say Teddy Riley has been screwing up my broadcast for the past couple of days, man.
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad that you are here, Doc. I could not do this without you. You know that. I could not do this without you and your expertise on the Black trans male experience. So I absolutely had to have you here. And so I just kind of want to jump right in terms of listening and hearing your individual experiences as Black trans members of the community. That's the first and foremost thing. I think what maybe some common misconceptions are about being Black and trans in our community, and what your own personal experiences have been. I'll toss it to Blossom first.
Wow. Let me tell you something. Can I keep it 100%?
Absolutely.
Intersectionality, when you are Black and you are trans, can be a bitch, and that is kind of real talk. I think 2020 was definitely that year where all of that kind of came to the surface. I will say that my experience being Black, being trans, has been a very unique one, but it's also been a very difficult one. I'm originally from the birthplace of blues in Mississippi. So okay. I'm from where Jim Crow was one of the last places that it went away from. Mm-hmm. I'm from like this very, very conservative state where the nephew of the woman of Emmett, where the nephew of Emmett Till's killer, so when what I'm trying to say is the governor is the nephew, he was the nephew of the woman that lied on Emmett Till and had him murdered, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it was very, very harsh. The whole trans experience is a very nuanced experience when it comes to the Black community down there. And so I had to really fight to let people know that I'm a woman and
Yeah.
I live this unique experience. Going through college, I got discriminated against going into nursing school because I
Mhm.
started transitioning in college.
Mhm.
And luckily, my story got picked up when I started working with the Human Rights Campaign, started volunteering with them. And basically, long story short, I ended up on Caitlyn Jenner's show, I Am Kate, and I
Mhm.
was on season 13 of Ellen. And basically, that's where kind of like my activism kind of started. It started with an injustice. And the
Mhm.
injustice was me trying to get in nursing school, trying to better myself, trying to better humanity in some fashion, shape, or form.
Mhm.
And what was so interesting was after that, I ended up not going to nursing school because the goals got bigger, the doors got better, and I decided to choose a different path. And so, going through activism and really experiencing the isms, racism, classism, sexism, a little narcissism, colorism, that have really, really plagued my experience, the things that I've seen, has truly, truly been an eye opening thing for me.
Mhm.
I once upon a time used to do sex work. I used
Mhm.
to go on the beat with the girls, and we would try to make money. Um, I experienced violence on the beat. I've been shot at, stabbed, maced in the face by some of the other girls. It was
Mhm.
really, really difficult. And the thing was, for me, I wanted a better life. And so, luckily, even though I had my foot in the door when it came to like those platforms opening up for me, I started to recognize that I, as a Black trans woman, have a certain amount of privilege now
Mm.
that I have to kind of start to address. And of course, having other people hold me accountable as well too. And this experience has been very, very interesting, because I was one of those trans people that had to navigate in this society, especially living in Mississippi, because most trans people are spread out,
Mhm.
especially like in very rural areas, and it's really kind of hard to keep up with like the numbers, and like the violence rates back home were incredibly horrible. I witnessed friends die
Mhm.
back home from like violence, and um, that experience just kind of tapping into that energy or whatnot. It still has me shook and spook,
Mhm.
and definitely was very traumatizing. But trans people, that's one thing we do. We carry a lot on our shoulders because trans people are always in survival mode. I don't
Mhm.
care how passable you look. I don't care how much of a celebrity you think you are, whatever the case may be. And so, yeah, that's just kind of like my whole experience, kind of like in a nutshell.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, from that experience, there's several things that you mentioned that we'll touch on tonight, in particularly. But
Yes.
one thing in particularly, I think, is the fact that you have to kind of continuously reinvent yourself or continuously be resilient to whatever is transpiring, and survival in,
Absolutely.
in that aspect. Dr. Elijah, I'm gonna toss it to you for your experience, and then I'll come with some questions here in a moment. Dr. E.
Hey, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for giving me a minute to get myself together over here.
No problem.
Teddy, somebody messing everything up
That's
today.
Teddy Riley, man.
And then, secondly, I knew you from somewhere, Blossom. I was actually watching that broadcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I remember I was watching that and I was like, dang, she just straight punked them. And it was necessary. It was classy and it
Mhm.
was amazing. So thank you. Like, I'm joking, but like, seriously, thank you for doing that, because that was the first time that I saw someone like say, you know what, enough is enough. And y'all not gonna sit here and act like this ain't happening when it's happening.
Mhm.
And it's like, you know, well, I could go on and on about that, but thank you for doing that. So, DQ, my trans experience has been, it's been an interesting journey, having navigated life over half of my life as a lesbian, and then coming out that as a lesbian, and then coming out again as myself as a trans man, having two coming out stories, it's been an interesting journey.
Mhm.
The trans experience, I was telling someone recently, like, I love being myself.
Mhm.
However, there are some times when it's really hard to be trans. I mean, and that is like the realest perspective that I can give. I'll give you a perfect example. Today, I don't know if you saw on my social media today, I tweeted and I said, you know what? I can make a whole like research project out of sauna conversations. Right.
Mhm.
So in one respect, I was like, yes, I'm passing. As bad as that sounds, as Laverne Cox referenced the other day, I'm passing. I'm in the men's sauna room, and so they're having men conversations, and it's okay, right? Because I'm comfortable in my skin. Um, but the one thing that I remember going through my mental health counseling was my therapist specifically asked me, this was my trans related mental health counseling. She said, how are you going to not be that guy? And I was like, huh? I didn't even think about it. And so now I know what she's referencing. And so I'm listening to these conversations, and it was a conversation. It went from would you date a woman 7 feet tall to uh all women in the NBA are gay. Women WNBA basketball players. Like that was the range of the conversation. And some of the things that were said and some of the language that was used, of if I were like in a bar somewhere, I totally would have interjected. But being a trans guy in this sauna, I have to consider my safety.
Mhm.
So there's this intersection of wanting to be authentic, but wanting to be safe, or and is but and wanting to be safe at the same time. So it's really an interesting journey, one that I would never change, though. I'm so grateful to have been born in the body that I've been born in for a time such as this. So I'm grateful. Overall, it's been amazing.
Wow. Wow. Just an amazing perspective from someone that, I know personally, number one, but then I also know has gone through the transitions. For the little bit of history that we do have, I met Dr. Elijah as a lesbian. And to see the transition, it's funny to me, and I don't think that I have ever verbalized this. I don't see you any other way, Dr. E. Like I can't see the person I met prior. And that's not negative speaking, but I see you for who you are. And to me, you've always been this way. So it's so easy for the connection and the relationship that we have, because it's not that I don't see Dr. Meredith. I remember who she is or was, if you will, if I'm
Yeah,
using that correctly.
absolutely.
But to me, you have always been Dr. Elijah,
Mm,
and I can't see you any other way.
mm,
And so I think that is very important to highlight, specifically for people in our community that may have encountered someone that might have transitioned from one letter to another letter, and is able to say, what, respect them for who they are, and see them for who they are now, as opposed to trying to make them live who you remember them to be, if
mm,
you will.
absolutely.
Um, and so I think that's vital. That's a vital part of the conversation. I do want to ask the both of you, and you both can chime in as you see fit. But in the Black LGBTQIA plus community, how is your perception of your uh, reception? How are you received? How are you? Do you see yourself being received within the community? Do you see yourself, existing or living very well within the community, and getting along with others in the community, or do you not have any experience with others in the community at all?
So let me out. Oof. Whoosah, here we go.
Okay.
Because let me tell you something. The Black Lives Matter movement this summer alone showed so much.
Mm-hmm.
It shows so much work that we need to do in the Black community. It wasn't even funny. You had George Floyd, who was murdered by police. And at the same time, you had a Black trans man by the name of Tony McDade that was also killed at the very same time. Marching and protesting in the rallies, no one wanted to say Tony McDade's name. I was out there whooping and hollering, shouting. No one wanted to say his name. But when it came to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and all of these Black cis folks who have experienced police brutality, you know, we're saying their names. And the thing is, without Black trans people, you have no Black movement. You have to have all Black people sitting at the table. Going back to this conversation about intersectionality, I really, really struggle with this because, again, I feel like I'm having to always defend either my Blackness or my transness. And it gets so frustrating to me when I'm having to defend more of my transness with other folks that look just like me. And it's really bothersome to me. It really does bother me because it's kind of like we've created this hierarchy within the Black community where Black hetero cis men are at the top and Black transgender nonconforming and non-binary people are sitting at the bottom. And here's the thing. We don't want to talk about how Black hetero cis men who are being killed by police are also killing Black trans women.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to talk about that. We water down that conversation and we negate it for a couple of reasons. Number one, we are afraid to give white supremacy a key to the door of the Black movement. And the reason why I say this is because, well, here come the white supremacists. Well, this is the Black.
Hang on, Blossom. We lost you. There we go.
Okay,
you're back.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Somebody would call me.
It's all right.
So what I was saying was, here, a couple of reasons. We are afraid. Here come the white supremacists. Okay, here's the Black movement. Well, y'all are saying Black Lives Matter, but you have Black hetero cis men killing Black trans women, and y'all not want to talk about it. So what's really going on?
Mm-hmm.
And see, I think in the Black community, we really try to gaslight a lot of those conversations. And what I have take issue with is some of these Black hetero cis activists who have gaslighted that conversation when it comes to Black hetero cis men that are murdering Black trans women, that are in these relationships with Black trans women, who are trying to use the trans panic defense in some of these cases. I think I'm really curious to know what that structure has to look like. You know, it's like what my good sister activist Ashley Marie Preston says, we can't heal what we don't reveal. Mm-hmm. And it just really makes me think how, in the Black community, how conditioned we are to a lot of things, a lot of intergenerational cultural trauma, because the trans experience I think a lot of issues in the Black community are a lot slower to happen as far as like LGBTQ issues. Being gay is one thing, being trans in the Black community is another. And so it's kind of like one of those things where, because we're just, again, I think just so conditioned. And I can say this, I'll speak for myself. Like, I was once upon a time very conditioned, living in the South, having the Bible thrown at me and everything like that. Like, you know, I was taught certain things, but it wasn't until I started traveling, started meeting new people who have a different background than I do, religiously, spiritually, whatever the case may be, that I started to open up my crown chakra and really begin to receive more of the information and level up my energy and my vibration to understand that just because I have a different unique experience than somebody else, then, you know, we can both sit at the table. I just really, really get frustrated. And that's the reason why I really did what I did at the CNN LGBTQ town hall, because it was something, number one, that was not meant to happen. And I will always thank Lizette Trujillo and her family for giving me that mic. You know, they're definitely become like family to me now, because here's the thing. It gets very tricky when we say trans women of color. It's better just to go ahead and say Black trans women. Because what happens is, and this is what was happening at the CNN LGBTQ town hall, they were using the Latinx trans women to gaslight the Black trans folks to say that we are inclusive of the trans community and we are being inclusive of the trans experience. Not one single Black trans person before I had protested were called up to the mic. My sister Ashley Marie Preston was supposed to be there that night on the mic. They canceled her last minute. As people were coming up to the mic, because CNN had to pick people to come to the mic, not one single Black trans person was up there. And it's just like you're trying to gaslight the intersectionalities, the intersections of the trans experience. And so, I did not expect it to be what it was. It wasn't about clout. It wasn't about fame. It was legit the right thing for me to do. It was something in my soul. The one thing I do regret that I wish I would have done now is all the Black trans people that were there, have them come and stand with me. But when your adrenaline is running so fast, like it was one of those things where it's like, oh shoot. But that moment has opened up so many doors of conversations, including this one as well. And so, the one thing that I really expect our Black non-trans siblings to understand is, once again, you cannot leave not one single soul out of the Black movement. Marsha P. Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. And I think we really have to get to this point where we have to continue to start having these open discussions and these dialogues and understand that Black trans people are Black too. We are innately Black. It is our birthright to be Black. I should not have to fight for my Blackness in a movement that's already my birthright just because I identify as trans. That's kind of where I'm at.
I have to, before I give it to Dr. E, I have not used this on this platform, but I have got to give you some more for all of that, because sis just laid everything out as plain as it possibly could be. Good gracious. But you are absolutely right. Yeah, she dropped the mic, Dr. E. She did. She dropped the mic. But you're absolutely right, Coach Blossom, because I personally struggle with making sure that pronouns are correct. I don't want to offend anybody, or making sure that we identify and properly identify each person that is a respectable person of each of the letters of the community. Like, those are my personal endeavors. But when you get into the fact that, the media wanted to show, if you get the opportunity, there's the clip of what Blossom had done at the town hall is available on all social media platforms. I'm sure you can find it if you research her name. However, looking at the audience was primarily, white people, to be honest, or non-Black people of color. And they gave them the spaces and the opportunity. So seeing the passion and the desire that you had to speak candidly was so necessary. So, because you exist. And I think that's the other thing. And we'll get to this question that I have in terms of how the trans community is being erased by our very own community, for that matter. But we'll get to that point. I'll toss it to Dr. E. Dr. E, you want to share your experience?
Wow, like, what a response. I don't even know what to say. Like, that's amazing, Coach Blossom. And if I can build on what the last thing you just said, DQ, about a piece of community being erased. Interestingly, that was a part of the conversation in the sauna today, was these two Black men, I'm assuming, it may not be fair to assume, cisgender Black men, were having a conversation about the Black male being erased. And there being this, for lack of a better word, conspiracy theory around erasing the Black man, i.e. allowing children to be who they are, allowing them to express who they are. They said, the gentleman said that that just wasn't cool, and it's not going to happen in their house, if you will. And so I was like, oh gosh, so many times I was just like, oh God, I want to say something so bad. But I'm glad I didn't, because it gave me the opportunity to really hear their perspective. Because had I interjected and said, hey, I'm a Black trans guy here, first of all, who knows what could have happened. But second of all, they may have shut down. So it was an interesting perspective, because they really, according to what they said, felt like there is this conspiracy to erase the black man. So there's that perspective. And then, thinking about Blossom's statements and her taking the mic that night, really owning the mic, because I don't think you took anything that you didn't deserve.
Yeah.
Think that it was a
Mhm.
kairos moment. It was a perfect moment. It was the moment, so that I get chills when I say it. It was the moment that needed to happen so these conversations could could take place. Because who knew we were getting ready to go into the deadliest year ever of trans murders? Who knew that Black Lives Matters movement was getting ready to take off like it did, right? So who knew? So I think it was very timely, and I think that it was very strategic, in my opinion, of God for that to happen that night. Going back to that night, if my memory serves me correctly, Cory Booker opened up the conversation. And the first thing that I said was he missed an opportunity. Now I understand there's always this perspective of, as a black person, you have to be on certain platforms inclusive of everybody. So I understand you can't just go on and talk about all black issues, right? We all get that. But I felt like Cory Booker missed the perfect moment to open up talking about, at some point in his time that he was allotted, something about the black trans women who had been murdered. At that time, I think we were at about 15, maybe 15 or 17. I'm not sure exactly. Um, but he missed the moment, right? And then there were so many other moments that were missed. So DQ, when you ask like what the reception is or experience is within the LGBTQIA plus community, it's hard to like put it all in like one sentence, if you will, because there's a myriad of things that happen that contribute to our experience. We can't have this conversation without talking about religion and the impact that religion has played on our psyche and where we are as black people in America, right? So I've mentioned this before, but the book by Frele, where he talks about, it's called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and he talks about how an oppressed people, once they become free, then they become the oppressor. So it's
Mhm.
interesting that in the LGBTQIA community plus community, many, many, and even in the trans community, if you will, many have become or attained a level of freedom. And so then once we attain this freedom, then we look down on others who are still aspiring for this freedom. So it
Mhm.
really is, as Dr. Danny talked about on this show the other day, it's a paradigm shift. It's an
Mhm.
awakening in the mind, and as bad as it may seem right now, I feel like the shift, the collective shift that we're experiencing, as it relates to universal consciousness, is a part of this paradigm shift. So
Mhm.
now we're seeing where there are trans folk who are being nominated, right? We would love to see some black trans folk get nominated and elected. And it's a shift, and it's happening. Is it happening fast enough? Of course not. But I believe that we are moving in the right direction. I've had some painful experiences within the LGBTQIA plus community.
Mhm.
I had to realize that much of that pain came from a lack of my knowledge and a lack of my understanding and a lack of my ability to effectively communicate who I am and who I aspire to be. So, as much as it's been painful, I own that as well.
Wow. Wow. I think that's very poignant, Dr. E, in terms of not only forcing the blame, because a lot of the time some people will force a blame, like they did this to me, this is who I am, they should have said this to me, they should have done this to me, they should have acted this way towards me. But you also have to take the responsibility in knowing who you are first and foremost to be able to then express or explain who you are to someone else. And I think that sentiment gets lost within the trans community a lot of the times, because at the end of the day, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not a trans person, so I don't profess to speak for trans people, but what I would assume is that you are still learning and developing who you are as a person. And with that being said, then trying to explain that to somebody else, sometimes it's hard to do.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know, you can't necessarily, you know, if you're still trying to figure out what makes you a trans male or a trans female, it's hard to then explain to someone else, be it family, friends, a lover or partner, what have you, etc. It's hard to kind of explain that aspect of yourself to them as well.
Yeah. And it's also important that we also remember that the trans experience is very fluid. You know, I identify definitely as a binary trans woman, but you know, I also have a responsibility to acknowledge our non-binary, like Black trans siblings. And you know, it's one of those things where those of us who are leaders, we have such a responsibility, and we must we cannot uphold problematic behavior. And there's always a lot of infighting within the community because we're always having to fight sometimes for what is the definition of trans. You know what I mean? There's also issues where it comes to sometimes trans women being over here, trans men being over here, and there's like this versus going on. It's interesting. I always like to say this, how society likes to try to feed the trans community crumbs when in actuality, we deserve a full course meal. So when we wake up spiritually, this is, you know, as a spiritual life coach, I'm getting into this. When we consciously begin to wake up and tap into our higher selves and really use that innate energy that is embodied in our trans bodies, that's when we begin to start seeing the bigger picture of things. Why do I have to step over somebody for crumbs?
Wow.
Number one, I do not have to step over you because there's room for all of us to sit at this abundant table where we can all have full course meals. But the way that society has constructively said to us as trans people, y'all have to fight each other for these resources. Think about it. Look at these trans nonprofits that have to always fight for funding. They have to fight each other for funding. They have to fight these other systems for funding. Look at trans Hollywood. Every time there's one trans role, because here's the thing, cis actors are still playing trans roles. They're still taking away trans roles. And the thing is, though, when that one or two trans role comes in, you have a bunch of trans people trying to fight for that one role. That's how white supremacy comes in and have us fooled into thinking that one of us is better than the other. And so it's like, how do we, I think, like, and here's the thing, whether you believe in God or not, that's not the point of my work, and I don't think that's the work of Dr. Eve either. It's about really just tapping into your inner power, your inner self, knowing who you are, trusting your intuition, and really using that. And that's what I want to, you know, I just became a life coach more recently on top of like 12 other hustles I already got going on. And, you know, it's a beautiful, powerful thing because the reason why I chose to do that is because, you know, as we're working on these systems, you know, making sure that trans people have housing and food and all this other stuff, who's working on the individual self? Who's helping them see their true potential? Helping them step into their true potentiality. Because here's the thing, this is my ideology. When you start working on the self, you show up better for everything else. One in numerology talks about individual self, new creation, beginning. And the thing is, it starts with you. You have the power to do so. We're all embodied with innate energy. We have the free will to choose what we want to do with that energy, whether it be good or bad, because energy doesn't come to you as good or bad. It's neutral. It's the choices and the decisions that you make that makes the energy what it is. And we have to be very careful that things are very karmic. And I just think that, you know, we have to be careful. Well, here's the thing. I think Dr. E kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but I was also thinking, because I'm a Libra, so I was also thinking about the other side of that as well. You know, this whole ideology of tokenization where one or two trans people have to go into certain spaces to kind of make the way for everybody else to come in. A lot of people don't understand what happens on the inside of it. They don't understand of the racism, the sexism, the misogyny, and all these other things that one or two trans people go through just to make way for everybody else. We always want to assume they're a sellout. They're upholding this, they're upholding that. And that's not always the case. Not everybody has those intentions. And so it's just really about having more of those tougher conversations, because I've definitely been that person many times where I have to go in these tight spaces because for some reason they don't believe enough in my trans siblings, but you believe enough in me. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, and I also have a conscious responsibility to make sure that they get to sit at the table too. And then, because once upon a time, I was part of the problem, but I've acknowledged it and I've learned to heal and grow from it and not let my trauma get the best of me. So, I know that was a lot, y'all, but whew.
Listen. I think Dr. E and I, anytime that you need to get it out, get it out. It is, you are speaking some serious truths here, Coach Blossom, and I think it's necessary for us to hear these things, because we don't often hear from the Black trans woman. We don't often hear from the Black trans man, and it's necessary. It's time to have these candid kinds of conversations amongst us in the community. The one thing that I think, and one of the gay gentlemen said this on my first night. He said, it's okay to have inclusive spaces for just us as the Black LGBTQIA plus community. And we don't have enough of them of just us. And to exclude everyone else, it's necessary for us to have that space, and it's okay for us to have that space. And so, yes, anytime you need to get it out, get it out.
Thank you.
You are welcome. You're welcome. I want to toss another question in the realm. How does the gay community help erase trans people? How do we, as Black LGBT or LGB, and I or the A, how are we helping, kind of turn the mirror on ourselves, or from your perspectives or your opinions or your expertise, how have you seen that we are helping erase you all from the community? That's hard. It's hard. I know.
Go ahead, Dr. E.
Hard question.
It's hard.
So when you say erase, like, do you mean like making us invisible as if we don't exist, or? From that perspective,
if we, how are we, if obviously we're not pushing the agenda, we're not, rallying with you to fight with what we're seeing as our trans brothers and sisters are passing, in record numbers. So I would personally think that would be a perspective where we are not, we're helping erase you from the community, if you will. Okay. But maybe you have a different perspective of, how and we can flip the question. If we're erasing you, that's one thing, and how can we help you is the other aspect too. As a Black gay male, how can I help you as a Black trans man and woman push the initiative to make it better for you? I mean, obviously, because we're better in numbers. And I think that from my, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the times the trans community, the intersex community, the asexual community, they all feel like they're in a fight by themselves. But I feel like if we were able to come alongside and say, hey, I fight with you, help me understand how, we can better assist you in your movement. So if you can.
So that's really a good question. It's a tough question. I love tough questions, especially when you make me go, because I have to think, right? And it makes me think about, well, first of all, what you're doing here is a way to help. Simply having the conversation. Thank you for having the conversation. It makes me think about, like when I first came out as trans, I realized very quickly that there's this big beef, for lack of better words, between the masculine identified lesbians and trans men. And so that is one way, like, let's talk about it. That's one way that the community, if you will, is erasing the trans experience. And I have to say that I'm just as guilty and contributing to that beef, because I have my own innuendos, if you will, about masculine identify. I mean, we all have our own stereotypes, right? And so I think the way that not just the community helps us, but the way we help each other is that if everyone were to move in love, And I know it may sound cliche, but if we all moved in love, if we all moved in light, and we erased, I love what my pastor says all the time: love, not labels. If we could get to a space where I don't care what you call yourself, I love you. God, because when it gets down to it, it's about love and respect, right? Love and respect. Because the reality is, I believe there are many stealth trans individuals that are a part of the many communities that people don't even know that they're trans. It's
Wow.
it's fortunate for them, yet unfortunate for people like Coach Blossom and myself and other trans advocates and folks who speak out, because when we are identified as trans, there's like this automatic barrier that comes up for whatever reason. But when you're thinking you're having a conversation with a cis person, I'm talking about the community. When you think you're having a conversation with a cis person, it's a free conversation. So, like I'm saying, like, let's just have a free, loving conversation, period. And as far as short term, it's us continuing to have these conversations, because as a trans person, I had to realize that this is not just my journey. It's my family's journey. It's my friends' journey. It's people at work, people that I encounter, the guys in the sauna, right? It's everybody's journey. So I have to start by leading with love. Like the love starts with me.
Yeah.
Once I realized that, once I was intentional about my vibration, the world around me changed. Like, for a long time, I almost feel guilty about saying this, but for a long time, I didn't have many of the trans experiences that many of my trans siblings have, and I credit it to me being intentional about my energy, intentional about my space and my vibration and the frequency that I'm on. And but a lot of people say, you know what, that whole vibration and frequency stuff, like, but I'm telling you, it's something to it.
It makes a difference.
Day, I'm like, this the kind of day I'm gonna have. These are the people I'm gonna encounter, and I'm moving in love and light.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes an amazing difference when you know what frequency you're on, when you know what energy you're putting out there. And as Coach Blossom mentioned earlier, it's karmatic, or it's if I'm using the word correctly, but it's
karmic.
Yeah, karmic, yeah. It's karmic. You whatever you put out is obviously what you're going to receive. And so I think that is absolutely poignant. Blossom, did you have a comment for the question?
So here's the thing, because I'm a Libra sun, Gemini moon, and a Capricorn rising. So that Gemini moon, which I saw on CNN, is a Gemini moon there. So I'm gonna go ahead and tap into that energy. Here's the thing. And I'm speaking more from past experiences, y'all. So this is like what I've encountered in my life as a trans person. Gay men, not all of you, some of you have upheld transphobia for too long. And this is the thing. This is the key. This is the key. When you see someone that looks like you being homophobic, being transphobic, being misogynistic, and you don't say anything, you are part of the problem. You are part of the problem, not a part of the solution. You have become complicit, and that's a problem. And here's the thing, and this is how you can tell where you are with that. If what I literally just said rubbed you the wrong way, you still have an issue with it.
Wow.
And I can just go ahead and tell you now, if you disagree with anything I literally just said right now, there's something inside of you, maybe some hidden trauma, maybe there's some low vibrational energy within inside of you that you may need to check and begin to heal. Because one thing I like to say about unhealed trauma, unhealed trauma will become a wound. Unhealed trauma will become an infection that will spread to other parts of your life and affect other parts of how you deal with your everyday things, like your relationships, your friendships, how you deal with your job and stuff like that. A lot of inner stuff on there. Now, you already know I was going with that. And see, it's not all gay. It's not all my gay brothers. brothers. Because let me tell you something, some of my gay brothers have definitely showed up for me and showed out on my behalf. And I saw a lot of that during the Black Lives Matter rally. And so I really, like Dr. E was saying, hold them in love and light and support. And so, you know, it ain't everybody. But the thing is, though, because living in Mississippi, I will say there used to be this split between the gay men and the trans girls for some reason. Out here in California, it's not, in my honest, humble opinion, it's not as bad as it was living in Mississippi. I think out here living in Los Angeles, it's much more like intersectional. It's much more like certain groups kind of like fighting for like the resources and stuff like that. But, you know, back home, it was much more the gay guys over here, trans women over here. Because let me tell you something about working the beat and doing sex work. Some of the gay dudes will throw on a wig because to them, they think the trans experience is a fetish that they can get a kiki off of for the moment. But see, don't understand that that's the trans experience. That's how the girls work all day, every day.
Wow.
But some of the gay guys, it used to be a fetish to them and it used to be a key to them. And so when you don't check that kind of behavior and you let it flourish, you know, that's kind of a problem. And so the question becomes, as a collective, now that I pointed out something, how do we begin to heal that? How do we begin to fix that? What are some of the what are some strategies that we can really begin to have those conversations? You know, I do think spaces are super, super important. I do think that each group should have a unique individual space, you know, to kind of collectively come together and vent and do what they need to do. I also believe in the same time, in the same breath, that we have to have those spaces where we can all come together and be able to do that. Like it works both ways. There's room for both of those. We do not have to choose that. And it's just interesting. I think in 2021, though, we'll begin to kind of see more of these conversations if we're willing to be open to them. But, you know, that's the thing. When are we going to be open to them?
Yeah, you honestly, for me, it's you have to create the space in order for it to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these, I have not personally seen any types of these conversations going forward, but I would, my desire and my hope is to take these conversations and catapult them to other experiences and other conversations for more people to have, and for us to really kind of unite together as a community, whether it's this platform and then when we take it somewhere else. And you know, when we can commune together, we do some type of symposium or some panel discussion where it is now a group of us and a conglomerate of us coming together to be able to really, really unhash some of the myths about us in the community. And I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right, where, you know, I have seen firsthand some of my gay brothers, you know, and sisters for that matter, you know, perpetuate the idea of the trans experience. And that's unfortunate.
I want to jump in on that too, though, because I can also talk about like Black cis women as well too. Not all, some. There's just this ideology where they're like, you know, Black cis women, we're not your enemies. We're just, you know, like we're women as well too. And we just want to be acknowledged. And, you know, there's just this thing where TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminist, exist in all colors and all fashion shapes and forms. And truth be told, there's just this ideology where Black trans women had privilege before they transitioned, blah, 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 blah. I got into a Frenchie Davis about this, actually. And so it's one of those things where that's not necessarily true. You don't know the experience. Yeah. And there's so many layers to that. And I even think you, Dr. E, can explain that even better, you know, from your experience. Like, it's just, you know, it's like, when do those things stop? And I want to hold people accountable in love, not to be mean, not to get a key or nothing like that. It's like, if I don't acknowledge that this is a problem, then we'll never begin the healing process. Acknowledgement is the number one thing that you do first. It's like admitting that there's a problem, admitting that there's an issue. Just because I point this out, it doesn't mean I'm trying to stir the pot. Yeah. No, we're just keeping it 100% energetically real. We have to.
Yeah. And it's time to.
Yes.
I think we have perpetuated, we've perpetuated the what we think we know as it pertains to each other in the community. but this is the opportunity and the time, especially with, you mentioned very heavily about the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that was happening in the earlier part of the year with the protests, and that'll lead into my next question, where I personally, as a Black gay male, went out to protest against police brutality because I'm a Black man first, right? Now you get, when you meet Dwayne Queen, you get a Black gay male. That's who I am. That's who I identify as. I'm never going to be anything else. But to me, in my opinion, I am Black first. I was born Black. I will always be Black. There's nothing about that I can change. But being in some of those protests and some of those rallies here in Atlanta, and realizing I'm standing next to a brother and or sister that we're Black Lives Matter, we're screaming, but when someone at the podium mentions trans lives or mentions the LGBTQ experience in conjunction with Black Lives Matter, then there's this hush or this lull or this whisper in the crowd, and it's an issue. And so then now, as a Black gay male, I'm threatened and I'm confused because I'm here because being a Black gay man is important to me, but I'm also a Black gay male. Right. And that's also a part. So now, if do I fight? Do I not fight? Do I join the movement? That has been my personal experience in terms of that. So that leads into my next question, which you touched on a little bit earlier, Coach Blossom, in terms of what is inferior most, your Blackness or your transness? Is your Blackness inferior to your transness, or is your transness inferior to your Blackness?
Go ahead, Dr. E. Go ahead.
Oh, where you get these questions from, man?
I love that question too.
I had to take my sweatshirt off, Blossom. Going in. But my honest answer, what is inferior, my Blackness or my transness? I would say they are both inferior to spirit. I walk in my Blackness, I walk in my transness every single day. But I walk in my spirit, or I shall say, and I walk in my spirit. So for me, this is just my experience. Neither is inferior to the other. All of me is relevant. And most of me, and I say most because 1% of my ego creeps in every now and then. But my objective every time I put my feet on the ground is that anybody that I encounter sees God and they don't see Elijah. And so for me to say that my Blackness or my transness is inferior to one or the other would really take away from the fact that I'm really a spirit having a human experience. And, I go further and say I'm actually a spirit having a human experience who happened to be assigned in a trans body that happens to be Black at this time. And so they're all equally important. They're all equally relevant. I would say as far as conversation, they come forth as appropriate, as necessary. Wow. Because it's, if I'm at the White House, they may need to know that I'm a Black trans man. If I'm in the sauna, they may need to know that I'm just this happy, lovely energy sitting in the corner just trying to sweat this stuff off. So, one of the things we talk about as Spirit and Truth a lot is the ability to live in duality. We all live in duality. We all live in duality. And so once you can master duality,
okay, yeah. I'll give you some on that one.
Yeah, thank you. Once you can master the duality, as Lisa Nichols says it, I can walk in brilliance.
I love Lisa. You better say that. Woo!
And live in my imperfection as well. Not to compare my transness and my Blackness to brilliance or imperfection, but it's all relative. When you can learn to live in duality and exist in any space that you're in, that's when you can make change. And not just you, but God can make change in the space that you're in, no matter what that space looks like.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
That was good.
That was so good.
Yes. I forgot what the question was because I was just all into it. I was like legit all into it. Like, oh my gosh, that was a goodness. I needed that.
So good.
I
But
needed that.
is your transness inferior to your blackness or vice versa?
Gotcha. I would agree with Dr. E. It's one of those things for me where it's all or nothing, and it's interchangeable. I feel like in some spaces my transness is inferior, where especially in Black spaces, I feel like my Black skin alone should sit me at the same level where other Black people are, but because I'm trans, it makes me feel inferior. And then I think in other spaces too, because anti-Blackness is very real in the trans community, which we don't acknowledge enough of, especially from other people of color that do it, with these microaggressions and stuff like that. I think like in the trans experience, my Blackness becomes inferior. It's one of those things where it's interchangeable. In the Black community, it may be more of my transness. In the trans community, it may be more of my Blackness. And so it's just really interesting how, and to be honest with you, like we cannot negate these things. These are things that you have to be vocal about, and people hate it when I'm vocal about it. I know I hear the things that they say about me behind my back. I'm intuitive. Like I hear all that stuff, and you know what? It makes me feel good because that's how I have to show up. That's how I need to step into my power. It's just one of those things where, and I actually had to get checked about this in a way, checked in a good way, where when I say anti-Blackness, especially here in LA, all Black people are dealing with anti-Blackness here. The Black gay men, the Black lesbians, the Black queer people, the Black trans, the whole, and it's very interesting because we have a lot more in common than what we think, but because we have let white supremacy creep in like a chameleon and have turned some of us against each other, turned some groups against each other, thinking that one is better than the other. Maybe because the spotlight does get on a little bit more. Like it's just really, really interesting, especially in the trans community where there are times I definitely hear when my Black trans brothers or masculine folks, masculine siblings, I'll say as well too. I'll make sure I try to keep my vocabulary open because I want to be inclusive of everyone, where they feel like they're in the shadow of the trans woman. And then there gets this uncomfortable fighting between the two. And it's one of those things where, number one, you also here's the thing. Trans women have had to fight to get to where they are. The same way trans men are having to fight to get to where they are as well too. I think Laith Ashley, who I love so much and is an awesome friend or whatnot, he talked about being socialized female. I think it was the conversation where because trans men transition from one thing and they're told that experience was told to be more quiet, not be much more talkative and stuff like that. Like the way that he explained it, like I don't like Dr. E may be able to explain it better. But the way that he explained it, I never really thought about it like that. It was like, whoa, it was kind of like shock value to me. Because usually in that experience, and when I look at my own experience, transitioning from one thing, like kind of living through that experience, even though it wasn't my true self, kind of navigating through that survival experience is what I'll call it. Cause I could have been dead during that experience, but that survival experience. And I think about how once upon a time, I used to be more of the protector and I'm learning how to nurture more. It's been interesting, but the thing is we are all of masculine and feminine energy and they have to work both together. You don't have to choose between masculine energy and feminine energy. You don't have to choose between your calling and your purpose. But see, again, because we let this white supremacy and these systems come into play, fooling us into thinking we have to pick and choose what our purpose can be. Like I'm all of these things. I act, I produce, I'm learning to write. I'm a life coach, I'm a spiritual life coach. I'm an inspirational speaker. I'm about to be doing 3 or 4 other side hustles, I'm quite sure. Like I embody all those beautiful things. I'm an activist as well too. Like I learned how to put my activism into my tarot cards. I learned how to put my activism into my coaching. I'm learning to put my activism into whatever it is I write and produce. Like all of those things are abundantly me. And the thing is, we have to be able to recognize our power. Because the thing is, Real does recognize real, but some of y'all don't look familiar. I'm just saying.
That was an extended horn, huh, DQ?
I don't even know. I don't even know if I can move on after that. Some of y'all don't look familiar. Oh,
On the TV. For real.
whew. But it's true. It's very true.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that it's taken this long for somebody to say that.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate that it's taken this long for us to realize that we need to be able to recognize each other and support each other and stand on each other's shoulders. It's really unfortunate, but we're here now, and that's what it is. The last thing I will ask, this will be my last question for the night, and I'll let you enjoy your evening. As Blossom, Coach Blossom wears so many hats. She's, as she just mentioned, activist, et cetera, et cetera. Do you feel like you, as members of the trans community, have to be the poster child, so to speak? Would it be almost easier for you to just live the stealth life, as you mentioned, Dr. Elijah? Or do you feel like it is your obligation to be a representation for the trans community?
We both go. You go first.
I can go. I feel like I've just talked a lot. I want to make sure I give you enough space to talk too.
I love it. Hey, go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? It's one of those things where when you say poster child, it's just, here's the thing. We have to also understand why people choose to live a stealth life. We have to be very inclusive of them because it also depends on the environment. They may be fired from their job. They could be fired from getting housing. They could be fired from their job. They may not be able to get housing or get food or something like that. Like, everybody has a story. And sometimes, especially going in very conservative areas, like where I'm from, stealth kind of is the only way for some people because, again, they may experience violence. Like, we don't know the backdrop of everything. The problem I do have with stealthness is, if you choose to be stealth, that's great, but don't berate somebody who's more open and loud and proud of who they are. You know what I mean? Like, that's my whole thing. Like, and vice versa as well too. Like, if you're loud and proud about who you are, like, don't try to berate somebody who may be a little bit more stealth and who kind of wants to dismiss themselves of the trans experience. Because one thing about it though, and I'm not going to mention that. I'm not going to mention that because I don't want to steer the conversation into that direction. Because I don't want to reduce it. I don't want to reduce the conversation. But the thing is, though, like, it's all about understanding each other. Some of us are called to do the work that we do, and some of us are called to go into these spaces where there's not that many of us. Like, we're leaders. We're the first ones that have to do it. I'm a life path number 9, so I've been here many lifetimes. I am somebody who is full of wisdom, and I've had to learn. Like, I've been here a lot of lifetimes, and so it's just like I have a responsibility to teach and to help. And to heal. But at the same time, I also have to protect my energy. And, if you don't protect what's yours, if you don't protect your energy, you become drained in this work. And a lot of us get so drained in this work because we're always wanting to focus a lot more on other people. I have Mars and Aquarius in my first house in astrology. The first house talks about yourself. So because Aquariuses think more of the collective, I'm always thinking of other people. But I've had to learn to make, like you were talking about, duality and bring balance back into my life. Like, it's all about structurally finding ways to kind of push forward and to do what you need to do. I think wherever people are in their life in the trans experience, I think it's beautiful. I think it's unique. I think, whether you're starting out or you've been in the game long enough, I think your experience is bold and unique. And I think we need to do more empowering each other and realize that we're kind of all in the same boat. It doesn't matter. I know I have a blue check mark on Instagram, but that doesn't make you any less important than me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't and I was just talking about this with a friend, we're all in this together. It doesn't matter about the followers, the likes, and all that other stuff. Like, you are a unique individual soul. You are a unique soul who is abundant, who is prosperous. And it's time for us to raise our frequencies up to this higher energetic level. Open up these chakras, that crown chakra, third eye chakra. Like, let's dive more deep with our intuition. Let's build together. Let's do what we need to do, and put our egos aside.
Mm. Okay, I was making sure. Woo.
I'm done.
Like I don't even like everything she said.
Everything. Okay. All right.
If
Yeah.
Everything she said, and for me, I had no intention of living anything other than stealth. When I first decided to transition, I changed my name. Like, I was scared, right? Like, I changed my name, and I went off social media that same day. So some people were like, wait, what just happened? And some people missed this, some people didn't. And in the 2 or 3 months that I was off social media, God was working on me. And while I planned to live a stealth life, and I was like, I'm just gonna come back, I'm gonna close my page, I'm gonna erase, Tasha Meredith, I'm gonna get rid of all of that. And probably like 2 or 3 o'clock one morning, God was like, yeah, this ain't about you. This ain't even about you. And so as I transition, it's interesting because Blossom, you talked about it earlier about the awakening and the spiritual path. My transition has been as much of a spiritual awakening for me as my whole first 48 years, right? And so while it would be easier, if you will, to live for me a stealth life, I came to be present as Elijah, as a trans man. Now, that is where I am today. I cannot say where I'll be 10 years from now, right? I want us to just, let those who live a stealth life know that that's okay too. Because the reality is many stealth individuals are making changes on our behalf that we don't even know about. Mm-hmm. And they can only make those changes because they're stealth. Mm-hmm. Right? It kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier when we talk about the slave, the house slave and the field slave. Mm-hmm. There were certain things that the house slave was able to do and make happen because they were in the house. The field slave, there's certain things that they're able to do because they're in the field. So again, it really goes back to that duality. And what is my purpose today? As every single day, God, what do you want me to fulfill today? God may have me in a sauna being stealth so I can hear the perspective of a cis Black man. So I think that for me, it's important to live in duality. There will be spaces that when I'm acting again, and when I'm acting, I'm completely stealth. They have no idea that I'm trans, right? And that's wonderful, because if and when they find out that I'm trans, guess what? They've just had an experience with a trans person, and hey, they're pretty cool. They're pretty all right. Whatever.
Okay. So I think that is a great way to conclude the conversation. I think it's necessary for us to, realize first and foremost that our trans brothers and sisters are necessary in our community, and that we need to do more rallying behind them and supporting of their movement and their causes and the things that affect them as trans people. You may not understand it. You may not identify with it. You may not, I won't even say the word that I was going to say because I hate it. But you still need to support and undergird them in the fight for them to be seen. As Coach Blossom has mentioned earlier, there are record numbers of trans women, and I'm sure trans men that we don't even know about, that are dying at the hands of people in our community, whether they look like us or they don't. And so this is an effort. This panel discussion was an effort to make a space for us to understand each other, for us to hear from our trans brothers and sisters, and to know that we're able to stand alongside them and fight with them as they fight with us and fight for us as a collective. Coach Blossom, please tell everyone where they can find you, where the best place to communicate with you is.
Yeah, social media, all social media on Instagram at Coach Blossom C Brown or just Blossom C Brown, all social media.
And Dr. Elijah.
Dr. Elijah Nicholas on IG, Dr. Elijah Nicholas on Facebook, Dr. Eli Nicholas on Twitter.
You had to be, somebody already got you on Twitter? You had to change it up on Twitter?
It's another Dr. Elijah Nicholas out there, I guess. He beat me to it.
Tag on it. And again, this is a Swank Arts and Entertainment production, which is my multimedia production and event management company. You can find us, you're either on our pages here on Facebook or on YouTube, our YouTube channel, or you can also go to Swank Arts Ent. If you have a panel discussion or something that you would like to make public or that you want to go to the masses, we can help you with that. It is centered around multimedia production and event management for the LGBTQIA plus community. So please check us out at swankartsent.com. That's SWANK Arts ARTSENT.com. Make sure you tune in. We continue the conversation tomorrow, same time, with Representative Park Cannon. She is representing the queer community. She is a representative here in the Atlanta area. So you don't want to miss us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Same time, same place. Again, thank you to Coach Blossom C. Brown, to Dr. Elijah Nicholas. And I want to do a special thank you to the intro that you saw earlier. The theme song is Make You Feel at Home, and that is by B. Slade. Thank you so much for your contribution to my platform. I think that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tonight. It has been necessary. It's been needed. And I'm sure, please share, share this this YouTube video so that people can hear this conversation, because it's necessary for our community. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Have a great night and be safe.